In the 1830s, the Hatch family of Lincoln, Vermont, occupied the upper tier of New England farming society. They managed hundreds of acres of orchards and lived with the quiet confidence of the established wealthy. This authority extended into the halls of power. Lorenzo's father, Hezekiah, served as a representative in the state legislature at Montpelier, anchoring the family's status as influential leaders in their community. That trajectory changed in 1840, when the family converted to the Latter-day Saint faith, a move that was, at the time, a radical break from Vermont's religious and social norms. The conversion triggered a rapid dismantling of their life. Local opposition grew so intense that Hezekiah was forced to sell the family's inherited lands to fund a 1,500-mile migration to the frontier city of Nauvoo, Illinois. The first major loss occurred before they even left Vermont. In April 1842, Lorenzo's mother died, removing the family's emotional center, just as they were preparing to abandon their physical home. These early months established the pattern of Lorenzo's life, a series of subtractions that tested whether a person can maintain their convictions when every external pillar of support is kicked away. The migration was a brutal physical test. This map shows the 1,500-mile gap they had to bridge, a grueling 6-week journey by wagon. Lorenzo's eldest brother, John, did not survive the trip. He grew progressively weaker, dying just before they reached the Mississippi River. They reached Nauvoo, but the sanctuary was a graveyard. By June 1843, Hezekiah Hatch was dead of a fever. At 17, Lorenzo was an orphan in a frontier city, responsible for his younger siblings. The final blow to his inheritance came from within. His own uncle, acting as the estate administrator, swindled the children, selling off their remaining wagons, their livestock, and clothing, leaving the heirs with nothing. Within 3 years, the wealthy Vermont heir had been stripped of his mother, his brother, his father, and his entire financial legacy. His survival now depended entirely on his own labor and internal conviction. Despite having nothing, Lorenzo accepted an assignment at 18 to return to the East Coast on a proselytizing mission, retracing his steps on foot. His journals from this period describe a desperate physical existence. He recorded nights spent shivering in the hazel brush without a blanket and days of such extreme hunger that he would vomit after finally finding a single meal. He walked up to 30 miles a day through knee-deep sloughs, often turned away from homes by locals who refused to provide shelter to a Mormon traveler, regardless of the weather. In June 1844, the mission took a darker turn. News reached him that the movement's founders, Joseph and Hiram Smith, had been assassinated. The central authority of his entire world had been erased. Standing in a small sitting room in Vermont, 1,500 miles from the chaos in Nauvoo, Lorenzo recorded a moment of sudden internal clarity. He described hearing a distinct voice naming Brigham Young as the successor to the movement. The isolation and grief of the previous 4 years had left him with no other anchors. This private certainty gave him a direction to follow when the institutional structure of his church seemed to be falling apart. Lorenzo walked back to Nauvoo, married, and threw himself into the community's final projects, including the completion of their massive stone temple. Through sheer physical labor, he managed to build a new estate worth $3,000, recreating the prosperity of his Vermont youth through his own hands. Then the mobs returned, burning the surrounding settlements. His new home became instantly worthless, impossible to sell as the entire city prepared to flee. On February 27, 1846, Lorenzo abandoned his second fortune, crossing the frozen Mississippi River with the wagons shown here into 1,000 miles of wilderness. The boy who had watched his family perish on the road to Nauvoo had been replaced by a man who had already survived the worst the frontier could offer. He stepped onto the ice knowing exactly what it cost to stay and what it would take to endure. Lorenzo Hill Hatch's journals record more than a sequence of tragedies. They document a specific process, a community trading its physical security for a collective internal iron. The movement used these moments of total subtraction to build a foundation that could not be burned down.